Welcome. Today, we're diving into a book that, let's be honest, a lot of people find kind of daunting, Leviticus. It's full of ancient laws and rituals that can feel totally foreign to us. But we're going to unpack this whole system of sacrifices to understand what they were all about and what they can actually tell us. So, let's get into it.
And that's a really good question, right? You've got these incredible stories in Genesis and Exodus, and then bam, you hit this dense book of laws. Why the sudden change? Well, it's because Leviticus isn't just a rule book. It's actually the hinge on which the whole story turns. It's the answer to this massive problem that just got set up in the book of Exodus.
So, here's the game plan for today. First, we'll get our bearings and see where Leviticus fits. Then we'll dig into the big problem the book is trying to solve. From there, we'll look at the 5 main offerings, and then we'll decode what all those rituals actually mean. Finally, we'll talk about why any of this still matters. Okay, so to really get a handle on these sacrifices, you first have to understand where this book even fits in the bigger picture. Context is everything here. So check this out. Leviticus isn't just stuck in the middle, it's the structural and thematic heart of the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. It's literally the centerpiece. Think of Genesis and Deuteronomy like bookends on a shelf, and Exodus and Numbers are the books leading you right into and out of this central crucial message.
And the timing? Oh, it's absolutely crucial. These aren't just random rules dropped from the sky. They were given right after the Israelites finished building the tabernacle, which was the special tent where God's presence would live. So this isn't the story hitting the pause button for a rule book. No way. These rules are the direct result of God literally moving into the neighborhood.
And well, having God move in right next door creates a pretty big problem, a core tension that this whole book is designed to solve. This is the question Leviticus is trying to answer. How can a God who is pure, perfect, and holy live in the same space as people who are, well, not? That's where the sacrificial system comes in. It's the answer. It's a system of atonement, a word that literally means at-one-ment. It's a way to make things at one again, to restore that relationship.
You'll see this phrase over and over again in Leviticus, and it's the foundation of what's called the Holiness Code. And listen, this wasn't just for the priests or the super religious people. This was a call for the entire community. The gold standard was God's own holiness, and these offerings, they were the practical step-by-step way for people to even try to get there.
So what's the solution to this huge problem? Well, it's a system of 5 key offerings, and each one has a really specific job to do when it comes to reconciling people with God.
Yep, there are 5 main types of offerings that make up the foundation of this whole system of worship and repair. Let's break them down.
All right, this table gives us a great bird's-eye view. And you can see right away, they cover a whole spectrum of what it means to be human, right? You've got the burnt offering for when you're just like, I'm all in for God. The grain offering is for saying thank you. The peace offering is all about community and fellowship. And then you have the sin and guilt offerings for when you mess up and need forgiveness. Some were voluntary, others were mandatory. Let's get into the details.
Okay, let's start with the burnt offering. This one was all about total dedication. The whole animal was burned up on the altar, which was a powerful symbol of someone completely surrendering their life to God. It was like saying, I am holding nothing back. And it also worked as a general way to atone for sin, kind of like wiping the slate clean.
Next up is the grain offering, and this one's really interesting because there's no blood involved. It was a voluntary gift, a way to just say thank you to God for providing. And the ingredients themselves were packed with meaning. You couldn't use leaven, which represented sin's corrupting influence, no honey either. But what you had to use was salt, a symbol of how permanent and lasting God's covenant with them was. So, the peace offering. Think of it like a sacred barbecue. It was basically a shared meal. A portion of the animal went to God on the altar, but the rest was actually eaten by the person who brought it, along with the priests. It's this beautiful picture of fellowship, right? A happy celebration of being in a good relationship with God and with each other. Okay, so now we're shifting gears a bit. We're moving from the voluntary, celebratory offerings to the ones that were mandatory, the ones for when things go wrong. The sin offering was for sins you didn't mean to commit. The ones that happen because of human weakness or just making a mistake. The imagery they used is so powerful. It's like a sheep that has just wandered off and gotten lost. This gave people a concrete way to find their way back.
The guilt offering is super similar to the sin offering. They both deal with unintentional sin. But here's the key difference. The guilt offering was for when your mistake also hurt another person or damaged something holy.
It wasn't enough to just be forgiven by God, you also had to make things right. You had to pay back whatever damage you caused plus a little extra. It really shows that forgiveness and community justice were tied together.
Okay, so we've covered the what of the offerings, but why all the specific rituals? Why do it that way? Well, the actions themselves were just packed with symbolism. They made these big, abstract ideas totally physical and real.
Let's just walk through the ritual for the sin offering to see how this worked. First, the person would lay their hands on the animal's head, symbolically saying, "My guilt is now on you." Then, the animal was killed. It died in the person's place. It was a substitute. Next, the blood, which represented the life given up because of the sin, was presented to God as the payment. And finally, the fat, the best part, was burned as a gift to honor God.
So why couldn't the Israelites eat blood or fat? There was a really profound reason for this. Blood was understood to be the life force itself, and life, well, that belongs to God. And fat was seen as the source of an animal's strength and energy. So by offering these specific parts back to God, it was this deep act of reverence, acknowledging that He's the one who gives all life and all strength. You hear this phrase a lot when you read Leviticus, a pleasing aroma. But this has nothing to do with how the sacrifice smelled. The Hebrew idea here is really about the offering being accepted or creating a sense of rest. The sacrifice settled the score. It calmed God's just response to sin and brought everything back into harmony. So think acceptance, not aroma. So, what's the big takeaway from all of this? Let's zoom out and connect these ancient rituals to the bigger picture and its lasting meaning. You have to remember, for the ancient Israelites, this whole system was basically the good news. It was an incredible message of hope. In a world where most people felt totally cut off from their gods, this was a clear, tangible, God-designed path back to forgiveness, back to a right relationship. It was a constant, physical reminder that you could always come home.
But this whole system isn't just about what was happening then. It's also pointing forward. Later theological traditions, especially in Christianity, see these sacrifices as foreshadowing something much bigger. This quote here connects that peace offering, remember, the sacred barbecue, the fellowship meal, directly to the idea of Jesus being the one who ultimately reconciles all of humanity with God.
And that really leaves us with one last big question to think about. Even though a 3,500-year-old system of animal sacrifice might feel a million miles away from our lives, the principles underneath it are, well, they're timeless. They get at these deep human needs we still have today. The need for justice, for making things right, that personal, desperate need for forgiveness, and the constant challenge of building a community that is healthy and whole. Which really makes you wonder, right? How are we supposed to chase after those same goals today?